Hello and welcome to the Holy Hour Podcast. It's the bi-weekly All Cure Podcast. I am Gavin and have a lovely show for you guys tonight. I am joined by Antonio and longtime listener, supporter, Patreon member, friend of the show, Coulter. Welcome back, Coulter.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I was trying to, as always, when we have a reoccurring guest, I want to do the full list of all your episodes, but I start scrolling back and I get lost and confused, scared, and I'm like, I don't know, he's been on a lot. You've been around a long time, so thank you off the top here for all the many years of support and great conversations and input through emails and such. So it feels like it's been a while, but I think confidently I can say the last time we've heard from you was on the tour talk there. So you recovered from your Arizona show?
Yeah, it was good. I remember I sent in a recording, and I think there was one other person who sent something in, so it's kind of cool to see, their experience versus mine.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who it was. But yeah, that was definitely the last time.
Lots not happened since the tour in the Cure world, I guess, but
well, it's crazy. I have the poster hanging up next to me, the one from that. Well, it's like the second edition of the Phoenix show, and I'm like, when was that? It says May 18th, 2023. So it's almost been a year, but at the same time, it doesn't feel that long ago. Nah. I'm like, when are they coming again?
Yeah, a lot of great shows, but not too much on top of that. Yeah, so we have to pick apart the little things, that make this kind of talk fun. And you had posted, I was trying to find that too. I couldn't find back where you had posted this idea for this episode, or you had just talked about long intros to Cure songs and how they're kind of known for taking a while to get the vocals going. And I can't remember what the exact context of it was, but I remember just being like, that's great, let's do that. So do you remember? Was it on the Patreon thread?
It was on the what we call them, the Holy Half Hour episodes, and it was Antonio actually was talking about him doing the cover of Fascination Street, and I forget exactly what he had said, but just mentioned hey, how long these intros are, especially because that song just do the bass line, however long it is in that one. But yeah, that's where it hit me, because sometimes I don't know, with albums, with the totality of them, you just kind of like, I don't know, like listening to Disintegration from start to finish, I don't really question how long the intros are, but then sometimes when a song's on shuffle and it comes on, it's like, oh, this is a long song. Or sometimes when I play it in the car, my wife and my kids are like, when is the actual song? When are they going to sing?
Right. Yeah, I think it's something that Cure fans have just gotten used to and love for whatever, context and reasons. Right. We've just accepted it and kind of forget about it. And then I remember when we were first listening to the first live version of End Song, and I was all excited and played that for Henson. And he was just like, wow, so there's no singing on this. And I'm like, no, just wait for it.
Wait. Yeah,
it's coming, man. He's like,
I love, though, when you look it up sometimes on like forums and stuff, and people like their funny comments. They're like, oh, it's so Robert Smith can slowly walk around awkwardly from side to side of the stage and look at everyone. Shut up.
So yeah, I mean, it's hard to, that's what we thought it'd be fun to dissect and try to figure out what are the pros and cons kind of thing. What are the songs that do have the longer intros? What are the ones that are surprisingly not as long as you would think they'd be? And what are the top ones for what do you even call this? Is the top question, I guess. Would you call it, because it's not really an intro, right? If the song just kind of goes and it almost is like the whole song for like a verse without vocals, and then it's almost like he's coming in on verse 2 a lot of times,
right? Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. I don't even think it's totally accurate to call it long intro. But it is, So, yeah, I don't know. But
it's also one of those things where like lengths of songs, really the only reason why songs were short, so you kind of couldn't do long beginnings originally, is because of what could actually fit on a record before they could do it at a higher speed, so that wasn't until like the mid 50s.
Yeah, because a lot of them were for the 45s.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it really wasn't until, somewhere, I think it was 1945-ish or something around there. Like, and then, that's when like the first LP was able to come out and you were able to have
Yeah.
more time, more space, and songs could be longer,
Right.
and then I think there was some experimenting in that, like in the 60s and things like that. And then you've got bands, like the Grateful Dead and stuff that are known for just, kind of
Yeah.
jamming along, and then stuff comes in. Uh, but
Yeah. A lot of
then,
prog rock kind of stuff too, I'm
yeah,
sure would be,
exactly.
It's
But then it became more about radio stations making money because you could play more commercials if songs were shorter.
yeah.
So they always wanted songs around 3 minutes long. Um, you know, so it's interesting to, that then you figure when they're, here comes the Cure, and which definitely they weren't playing by any rules. So I think
Yeah.
there's something like, there's something interesting just in general about the why, songs are expected to not be so long, which means you need to get to the words quicker.
Right.
Like, because we
Yeah.
were kind of trained as, I was kind of trained as a songwriter. Like, hey man, you want this song to be a hit, it has to be 3 minutes long. You have to
Yeah.
have something catchy, within the first like 10, 11 seconds, because most people's attention spans are only about 8 seconds long.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I spent my whole life thinking that, but then loving a band that didn't do that. And
Right.
like,
Yeah. It
so
is
it's
a
kind of
weird
interesting.
contrast for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so strange in the sense that it puts a lot of pressure on the vocals in general. Like why is that so important that we have to get to that right off the bat? But I think it is true in the sense that a lot of people, it loses a lot of people if you don't get to it right away. It's kind of like, what's going on? Why isn't he singing yet? Is it an instrumental song or something? Because usually when you do listen to like a new song, if they're not singing by like the minute 30 mark or 2 minute mark for sure, I even click it in my brain like, oh, it must be an instrumental song,
Right.
like at that
Right.
point,
Yeah.
you kind of given up on them, but it's cool that it's become kind of a, like when you hear, when I've heard on like podcasts where they're just doing like a feature of the Cure or something, where somebody's just kind of describing the Cure in a nutshell, it's become one of the things that they kind of casually drop. It's like known for not singing until, like you would hear people kind of describing the band as this, like they do take their time sometimes getting to the songs, and that's kind of cool because they are a pop band too. I think it's that contrast of everything that they're so good at.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think on those front of like, because I think that is huge in the idea of like, the Cure always has that pop versus the dark side anyway, but it's real hard to do this like a long instrumental on any kind of pop song, and even they don't do it quite as much. Most of their singles do get to it, or the radio edit will get to it quicker, but on that praising note, they do have singles where other bands wouldn't dare even attempt that. They have singles, like you said, Fascination Street. That's on our list here. We have a huge list we had written out of just the numbers and the kind of timestamp of when they come in. I had Fascination Street at 2 minutes and 23 seconds before the vocals start. The single is definitely trimmed down, I think, but the radio edit or whatever, but the actual album version, 2 minutes and 23 seconds. And I'll tell you right now, it's not even the longest one that starts, but that's a single, so that's pretty rad.
Yeah, it definitely is one of those things that it's not too many people pull off.
Yeah.
Like I know you looked up some comparisons, but
yeah, we'll get into a few.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it is like you were saying with it, where it's just hard to idea on like pop radio or anything, in particular, to really milk the beginning of a song. Because if a band does do it, it's gonna be like a deep cut, track 10 or something on the album where they just really basically had an instrumental kind of song and throw a little more vocals in the end. It's a deep cut for sure, not the single usually. So I think that definitely throws a little more weight in it, where it's like, wow, you can actually do a poppy song that way too. So
yeah.
So. Now I was gonna say, I think it'd be curious to know how, like, the length of the radio edits, how much they cut, because those aren't ones that I listen to, that often. I usually just go with what's on the album. So I'd be curious. Like, I think some of them, right? They just make that instrumental or the intro or whatever shorter, or they'll fade out the outro. In fact, a song that I didn't realize had a radio edit was oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember the name, but Bloodflowers, right? They didn't actually have any radio singles, and then didn't they do Maybe Someday, and they had one. I actually listened to it, and they kind of just had a shorter intro. There's a lot of those I'm not too familiar with.
That one I actually liked a lot. I kind of arguably at times like the radio edit for Maybe Someday better. I think they chop something around the middle too, like there's like a bridge or something that starts getting
there is something missing there.
And I think it flows a lot better because that song kind of starts to meander a little bit by the end, right. But I wonder, if there is some kind of like editor formula in a sense, or some kind of guidelines they go by, or if it's all just kind of feeling of like you could trim that down a little, trim that down.
Well, do you think Robert does it? Do you think they do that, or the radio company or whatever is like, hey, we're gonna?
No, that's done. That's done by the record labels.
They do.
So the record, when the record labels, like when a recording is done, and they start to listen to the songs, or they're starting to listen to the rough versions, they're all discussing like what should be the single or what should get pushed to radio. And then if they do decide it's one of those that's really long, they will then say to the band and the producer, like, all right, this one's going to need a radio edit. Let's get it down to around 3:30 or something like that. And then the producer cuts that,
it's like
as he's doing the record. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's usually how that works. Because the radio, the radio stations, those guys are they're just hit and play, like.
And I guess, because then you have the flip side of the extended mixes and the, a lot of times they'll get somebody else for that too. But, then it's like, we're going to stretch it out even longer in the beginning for the extended mix.
Right. Yeah. But, and if we're being honest too, if we really think about like, the Cure, in their beginning stages, I don't know if their label was like, this band's going to be gigantic. Like it was definitely different. It was against the grain. It had a bunch of, different influences and whatnot that you could hear, but it didn't quite have, it wasn't punk. It wasn't this, it wasn't that. So I think it gave them a little bit more freedom when they were recording, and how the songs were and how they came about. And then I think that stigma kind of stuck, and I feel like Robert's the kind of guy who just won't listen to, probably does not listen to a label anyway, or listen, you know what I mean? Like, because let's be honest, I'm sure the label wants their new record out, but you know what I mean? But I think it just like, at the right time, they were doing a sound that was different. So I don't think they were getting forced to go by that formula of songwriting, that Beatles formula that a lot of like producers say, it's like, should be this long. It's verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, out,
You can tell they kind of stick to it for Three Imaginary Boys. It's all kind of quick poppy punky kind of stuff.
Right.
But then as they start getting into the dark era stuff, you get a song like Funeral Party or something, that's not gonna be a fucking single anyway. I think.
Right. Yeah.
Right off the bat, you're like, all right, I might as well make it 8 minutes if you want. It's like nobody's gonna fucking put that on the radio. But so I mean, I think. Yeah, it's cool that they established that right off the bat too, like kind of getting that level up video game style. Or then they have that trick in their pocket of like, well, we can also do these big moody songs, but then they already have like Boys Don't Cry and Fire in Cairo and shit, so it's like,
right, yeah,
they're always kind of doing that in those early stages of their career where they're just gathering little milestones and things that they can touch back on, whether it be kind of poppy or just over dramatic as hell or goth, So,
so I'm trying to think of some of those like early songs. Pillbox Tells, was that the name of one of the early tracks? And I think those ones were kind of, I mean, just like you guys said, not necessarily punk, but I mean, they were shorter songs that kind of got into the lyrics a lot sooner. And as I was just going through albums and just trying to look for lengths of intros, as I looked at Three Imaginary Boys, it's like everything here, I bet everything here starts pretty quick. And that was the case. And like, well, maybe Three Imaginary Boys, that's kind of I don't know, that song seemed like it was one of those ones that kind of was foreboding about like what their style could go on to. And even that one, I don't know the time step off the top of my head, but I think it was like maybe 30 seconds or something.
Yeah, that seems to be from doing this. It looks like most bands kick it in around the 30-second mark. If they're being a little moodier, it's 45 seconds. So usually by that point you're getting on with it. I was when I started at the top two looking at it, I was like, 10:15. I bet that one goes on for like a minute and a half or something. But that was only 45 seconds before it starts. But those are kind of the ones too. Even in the early days of. Setting the mood first before he comes in, and even Killing an Arab, I was all like, well, it's got that whole little guitar thing, but it's going so fast, it's 26 seconds. So I was like, oh yeah, nothing too long there until they get to Faith or they start kind of breaking that minute mark, but or even 17 seconds. I guess with The Forest was the first 1:48 before. Which is that's another one that's a single. So that's a pretty notable one, 1:48. And that's like super trimmed down, the album version of A Forest. What's on there versus like, I'd like to do a comparison live. I bet it definitely drags out a lot more depending on what year and stuff. But, closing in on almost 2 minutes though, that's, most of my songs I wrap up by the 2-minute mark, and I'm kind of just dragging it out for one more chorus by that point, and he's hasn't even started singing yet. So that's pretty cool. I guess as far as the pros and cons, when I'm saying like sets the mood and stuff, I think that's why it really does work, especially for like deeper cuts or slow cure songs. And that's why I love it. I know, where it's like, and why Disintegration is so heavy on a lot of these, where all those songs, even the popular ones, take a extra little stretch to get going. That album in particular is pretty, slow paced. And even though they're like popular songs, even some of them like Pictures of You or something, it still takes a while. But I think it really adds to the emotion of it, like. It's like this beautiful instrumental song, and almost doesn't even need the vocals by that point, But then when he kicks in, it's like, oh, and they're amazing lyrics. Then it's like icing on the cake more than a whole part of the song that you need, And I think that's where it's gold for them, is if you can get it where it's like an awesome song.
But those kind of have the build up, right? Where it starts with one thing and then it kind of adds like a keyboard, whatever. Like there's a different piece that adds on, and then probably the song comes in. So a lot of those, I feel like I don't really think about the length just because it's like building on itself, and then finally like the lyrics kid, and like you said, kind of sets the mood. So when I just off the top of my head was thinking, what do I think would be the longest intro that they have? And the first song that came to mind was Fear of Ghosts, just because I kind of it's kind of that same piece over and over, and I don't think nothing really gets added to it. And so I was just surprised how many of the songs really do just something gets added, like they're adding more sound to it, another instrument comes in and it builds up.
Yeah, that's huge, because if it was just coming out barreling with like all the instruments and then goes on for like 2.5 minutes, right. It'd be like, okay, dude, get on with it, It would be interesting to kind of look at them closer at the ones that do that more, probably the ones that don't work quite as well, but something like Pictures of You and, the ones where they're throwing in those extra little layers, each pass, you get another little keyboard part added and stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's also, I know we've mentioned it on episodes before, but, Robert Smith's guitar parts and his leads are written more like melodies. Yeah. Where he's not really a lead necessarily guitar player. When you think of guys like shredding leads, it's not you don't go and think of The Cure necessarily. So I think it also has to do with the way that his style is and how it works with Simon, because Simon will write like such a steady bass line, and then Robert can do like that melody, and then the keys then will come in and it adds something. So I think it's also like it's a lot of times it's not just a strumming, it has to do with his songwriting too. Like
Well,
it
just
really works with the style
yeah,
of how he plays,
very
you know.
melodic, like you're saying, Antonio. Where like you said, Simon's got his thing, but like Robert will play that bass six, right? So it's like I don't know. They're both kind of along that same sound, but they're both playing some sort of a like this melody, and they kind of blend together. It's not like just like a lead solo or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that stands out. It's just this the melody's kind of flowing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not missing a melody of like someone coming in and singing, because there's a melody aspect to a lot
Already
of his
going.
guitar parts that are going already, to the point where you can almost, like, if it's the first time you've heard it, you can, by the time the verse comes in, you could probably already hum what the melody is going to be.
Right, or at least have some idea, and yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely, you know is there intention to it? Maybe, who knows what's in that man's mind.
Right.
But but I think it also is a just natural evolution of their sound,
Yeah.
and how they play their instruments. At
Yeah.
least the core two being, Simon and Robert. Like,
Yeah.
it's
And
there's
yeah, it's
definitely
all the
something to that.
layering, that's something
Hmm.
I've loved about them forever. And I think it is. You hear those demos on the deluxe ones and stuff, and you kind of
Right.
get those like 80% there kind of glimpses of it. And he's just kind of casually throwing another little keyboard riff, like another little melody on the guitar, another little, and then you can almost tell that he's just building it up like that. And then he's like, oh, yeah. And then if I need to sing, I'll sing. Maybe I don't even need to sing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's kind of like sweet because, yeah, you would think that everything would be like, fuck, what's the vocal melody going to be? Like the pressure of that right off the bat. He's got to get it in there. And it almost seems to be like an afterthought, It's like, and then I'll start singing. And it's like,
Yeah, why not? I'll just sing right over here. It seems
right.
like a good time to jump in. Why not?
Yeah. And I think it makes it more meaningful to the lyrics too when it's concise and stripped down to something like closed down is like, one real verse basically, or 1,000 hours or something, where it's just like a
Yeah.
short little thing, and he's not repeating it 5 times in the fucking song, or you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
So
but like,
it
even like you
definitely,
said with Pictures of You, I could not imagine that song without giving time for that beautiful music to breathe in the beginning
yeah,
of it, to really set the table for what you're about to hear.
yeah,
Like, I think if that song in particular, if you were to, start singing 15 seconds in, I
mm-hmm.
think it would really lose a lot. And it's not like it's anything different, and it really does,
Yeah,
because when that song comes on and I'm hearing it, it's like, all right, cool, you're prepping me, you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yep.
And like,
Going back to radio edits, like have you,
right.
that's the worst one. I don't know if
No,
it's
I
just
agree.
because I love that song so much, but God, it kills me that fucking Pitches of Your Radio edit, or the video one where he just comes in
Yes.
like way too
Yeah.
soon, and it's just like it's just like
I know.
the
That's
mood
why
isn't set.
I never listened to it.
Yeah,
It's like,
it should have been banned
Hmm.
or something. I
yeah.
mean, you kind of had to do it, I guess, if we, going back to what we're saying for like radio stuff, but it does just totally take the piss out of the whole song,
But then
before.
again, I know we're in a different day and age now where radio is not as relevant, but
Mhm.
even with radio, at the time being relevant, or like, I know people that's all they do.
Yeah,
They get in their car and they'll listen to whatever's on the radio. They're casual music fans, right?
yeah,
They're not going to change it because one of the songs, like, is a little too long, or the lyrics don't kick in yet. I feel like they just have that station that they listen to and they leave it
right,
on, and then that's it.
true,
So, like, I almost feel like it never really needed it to be a stigma, that it had to be short and
true,
sweet, because I'm like, man, everyone I know listens to radio. Like, if I'm stuck in somebody's car and that's what they do, and they're not listening to Spotify or a CD or a cassette or whatever,
right. He just,
not a full album, it's just like they just have whatever random radio station is on. They will just listen to whatever,
yeah,
you know.
and they might almost like that more because it is setting more of a mood, and what I
Right.
mean, just kind of filling the empty space better with a long song that takes a while to build up and everything. So, yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And I like the idea too of like those melodies and the guitar parts doing the vocals already. So your brain's kind of tricked into thinking that, because
Yeah,
and it is for songs like those ones that have the billion layers. Because if they, if you think of something like Boys Don't Cry, if you just kept playing the chords over and over, it would sound weird as
exactly.
hell.
It
You'd
would
just
be
be like,
very weird. Yeah.
where are the vocals?
Like
Something that's
somebody
just real
say something.
yeah. So I mean, if it's got something like Fascination Street, you're like, oh, here comes a little piano part, here comes the this and another keyboard part, and you don't even realize how much time's going by. It's like the
Yeah,
whole
very
week's
true.
gone. So maybe should we look at the ones that are the longest, and
Yeah,
what are
let's break those
the
down.
we like we said, it came up with kind of a list. We were just kind of throwing them back and forth, and just kind of went off the top of my head thinking through the albums of which ones would be the obvious ones. I didn't listen with a stopwatch to every Cure song just to see, so something might have slipped through the cracks. So listeners out there, definitely let us know if you think there was a long one. But just kind of based on like most of them were kind of a minute and a half or so for the longer boys, and then a few broke through to the 2 minute mark. Going off the list, I guess it starts early too. So like we were saying, it wasn't really something the Cure just started doing around like Disintegration or anything. Like the song Faith is 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Holy Hour, people might be thinking that one might be close, but that was only a minute and 25 really. And All Cats Are Gray is 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Funeral Party, which I cited earlier, is actually only 50 seconds before. So it's kind of interesting too, doing this of like seeing ones that you think would be absurdly long, and then it turns out
Yeah.
they weren't that
They're
long.
not that long.
Just did a lot in that 53 seconds. So,
Right. I would have guessed. I would have guessed for sure Faith would have been the longest one there, and then I probably would have thought Funeral Party was the second. I don't know if it's just because it's kind of a almost feels like it drags on in a good way, where it's that same. More,
yeah.
that mood's
And,
kind of the same.
and let's get some perspective here. Here's a very famous song that most of the listeners should know that is only 2 minutes and 14 seconds, which is shorter than some Cure intros before they start singing. Blitzkrieg Bop by the Ramones is only
Wow.
the whole song is 2:14.
2:14, yeah.
I want to be sedated 2:29. Like so it like there's some realistic perspective on gigantic radio hits that are the length of just Cure
just
intro.
before he starts singing. Yeah, that's I was joking, going in back to my Lemonheads infatuation. They were connected to a band in Australia called Sneeze Through Half a Cow, and they had a whole concept album where they put out 40 songs on one album, and the only real rule was that the songs couldn't be over 2 minutes. So
Right.
every song was under 2 minutes, and like as a lot of punk stuff and anything like that, it's gonna be like the whole song's fucking wrapped up by the time before any singing even starts. So pretty funny, but yeah, those are big hits. Those it's good to know. So yeah, I guess along the lines of it isn't all just super faith dark ones too. Push is one that would probably come to mind to a lot of people. Is like, oh, Push is probably their longest. It's a whole song like twice before he starts singing, pretty much.
Yeah.
2 minutes and 24 seconds. So that's a good lengthy gap, but not the longest. Not even in the top. Breaking the 3 minute mark. I'll say off the bat, there's a few that break the 3 minute mark, but that's cool because it is a poppy one. Like we said, most of these would be slow songs that build and build, but it's almost more impressive when it's like a catchy, fun song, and he hasn't even started singing yet. I guess we could go back to the first 3 minute one is the song Pornography. Surprisingly, not too many other ones on Pornography were very long. But the song Pornography is 3 minutes and 15 seconds before, and even the singing of Pornography on the album is very, everything's so like, really. So it's a lot of sounds going on, but it doesn't count. It's 3:15 before that one. Sinking, it's just barely under 2 minutes. Breathe, I thought might be another one. It was close, but only a minute and a half. A contender here, 2 minutes and 45 seconds was If Only Tonight We Could Sleep. So that one's getting close to 3, but
Yeah.
Because that one definitely does build up for a bit there. And One More Time is another 2-minute 11. And then a big boy comes in on the Kiss Me album. Can you predict which song? Anybody out there? Right off the bat. 3 minutes and 50 seconds, which I know is long, but I didn't think it was that fucking long. So this one's a contender for the winner here. The Kiss. 3 minutes and 50 seconds of wah-wahs and rock and roll. So,
yeah.
Which builds it up great, you know? I think real weird choice to kick off an album with
And then
that.
it goes into Catch, and I don't think Catch has a long intro.
Love. It's funny thinking of the idea of instrumentals too, like how a lot of those ones could be a cool song. Like the Kiss totally could just cut off and be a cool instrumental rock song, you know, it's like an intro in itself or something. But
right, yeah.
But it's funny because The Cure, you always think is a band that would probably have a ton of instrumental songs, but they really don't even have that many, like actual on recording, especially not until we just recently got those 4, people had them on the tape of the Wish, Lost Wishes ones, but until then we only really had like
17
the 2
seconds
little
ones,
snippets
right?
and those are like little mini guys, and on top of that, I don't even know if there was any other ones, not counting like Carnage Visors or something, but you would just think that they would be, if anyone was going to drop a bunch of random instrumentals, especially too from interviews, as much as he's always been like, half these songs were going to be instrumentals. I think he's even kind of put that with his solo album talk. I'm going to do an all instrumental album. It's definitely come up a few times where that was the threat, even Friday I'm in Love was going to be an instrumental song at one point or something, it's like, nope, but I think they kind of cover that base by doing these long intros. So it feels like you've done an instrumental song and you got your pop song too. So To the Sky was one I thought would be a big, it's a minute 10. I think there is like an extended mix when I was initially.
There's 1 or 2, right? And then like the Resurrection mix. I know there's a couple, and they are.
Yeah, because I had something on a bootleg that was the first time I ever officially tracked it down as a wee boy. I found it and it had a real long beginning that I don't think is the version that's on Join the Dots. I think it was some kind of extended mix where it kind of kept going, which is cool. That little riff is awesome, And just for context, I put Just Like Heaven on the list there, which is a good, because it does actually have a lot of good layers coming in, but they're coming in very swiftly and just doing one quick pass. It's 50 seconds before he starts singing. So seems a lot shorter than you would think, though, because you got the bass and the drums and the keyboard part and the guitar coming, everybody's coming in one at a time and doing the whole long lead guitar run there. So yeah, that takes us up to Disintegration there. So this is gonna be some big ones too. I guess before I continue on that list, I guess Coulter, you had found a cool thread on Reddit there where was people kind of throwing this idea around too.
Honestly, I can't remember all of the discussion, but I think they're just asking like what tracks kind of did it work to have a longer intro, or what kind of surprised people that were longer or not. One that stood out to me, honestly, I don't remember if it was from the thread, but you were talking about push being as long as it was, and then Seeking had a long intro too. But I would have guessed that Seeking would have had the longer intro.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think you just naturally think the slower ones would milk it longer, but right. Maybe just because they're slower paced that they kind of cover more grounds with it. But and it's more impressive on the poppy ones for sure. But yeah, I think they were just kind of just talking about what their favorites are, for.
When I thought like I was all of like Pictures of You are the ones where what most people would know.
Yeah, that, and I think a few people were calling out the Kiss and stuff like that too. But yeah. Oh, and Plain Song, actually, that's what gave me the idea there. Was Plain Song was one that everybody kind of cites, and it is a good length. It's a 2 minutes 38 seconds before the vocals kick in on Plain Song. Which even that I would think
that's why they open with it so much.
Yeah, I do feel like it is a good, going back to the joke or what people had said to you, Antonio, of like the idea of playing it live when you have these long intros before it is cool. And the few, I don't know, I guess I've never really played in too many bands that would do something like, definitely not that long of intros, but I always liked when there was a longer, because you can kind of absorb the room a little, make sure all your shit's working before you start singing,
Yeah,
like look
exactly.
around, kind of get a feel for the crowd and stuff like that. And if you have this 2 minutes and 38 seconds, that's definitely a good chunk for Robert to come up, size everybody up, and so I could see that being a plus. Probably not like written directly for that. You would think artistically,
Right.
he probably isn't like, I need a song where I can
No,
walk
but I
around.
bet it is a thought when choosing the first song of the set, or the first song when coming back to the stage for one of the,
Yeah,
I'm sure there's that's a little bit of a part of it.
yeah, yeah. Helps you just kind of get the music side down too, instead
Right.
of coming straight out and being like,
Most of the first
singing.
songs seem like they're have the longer intros that they build with. Maybe I'm trying to think how long Open is off the top of my head, and I know that like they have Tape, that intro one, that one wasn't on the
Yeah.
actual album. So Antonio was kind of talking about
Oh,
how Robert will come out and he'll kind of be walking around or acknowledge people. I mean, like
Yeah.
Alone
yeah,
is supposedly the first song of the new album. That's what they open
yeah,
with, and then in 2016, when they were kind of like One Night Would Be Wish, One Night Would Be Disintegration, One Night, and they mix it up, but it always seemed like they'd start with either Open, Plain Song, or I think they did Out of This World. There might have been times when they changed it up, but it seemed like they went to those three.
yeah.
So it was usually the longer ones.
Yeah, it is kind of the epic intro, and then or the opener, and then having a time to size it all up for sure. Open is 1 minute, so that one's actually one of the shorter
Oh yeah, that's
ones.
not that
But
long. When I saw them in 2016, they did
eh,
play Tape. They had to go first, and that gave them some time to kind of
yeah,
yeah.
and even plain song, if they let the chimes go while they're kind of standing around and stuff
And it kind of
too, or
extends it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
yeah, the water for Alone or whatever, the
all the
rainfall and
rain and
stuff. So. Out of This World was 2 minutes, so that was 2 minutes and 8 seconds. So that's another one. But I think they just like that big dramatic opening track too. So it works both on the recording and live. So I always thought Want would be one. It's a hefty one, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. But that one feels like it's almost like a whole song by the time he gets singing on it too.
Yeah, totally. And
But,
and that's the thing too. So for instance, my daughter, she's 16.
uh,
That's her favorite Cure song.
is Want
And that's yeah,
okay.
it's the song that she like, she liked a lot of the songs, but I think that's the one that like hit her the most when she was like, and it went from I like these songs to I really love this band, and so for a 16-year-old where they're saying the younger people have a lesser attention span,
right.
that's a
Mm-hmm.
song with over 2 minutes before Robert sings, and she loves that song,
That's cool.
so it's just interesting, I think it's, if you love what they do, you clearly can't, hate it,
Yeah.
because it's such a part of it. But why them over other bands is the interesting thing. Like no one else I think has pulled it off as well,
Yeah.
or does it as much,
Right, right. So yeah, maybe good segue with that too. Along these, we'll come back to some other timestamps, but we did ponder like, well, what other bands do this, and even just since jotting a few down and stuff, like, you got me thinking with those, because that's probably my least musical knowledge is like prog rock bands and shit. So I would be curious to know if like Yes or something. A lot of those
right?
kind of
Yeah,
bands like have them, maybe, but yeah, I mean, just thinking and looking up a few. There really isn't anybody that does it as consistently as The Cure. I don't think that I could think of, especially their peers, as far as bands that we all kind of know. I kind of immediately went to like, the Holy Trinity kind of bands, and like Depeche Mode was definitely the majority of their songs were like 30 seconds when he'd start coming in. Some of the longer ones stretched into like a minute. Black Celebration's a minute 7, Behind the Wheel a minute 20. but a lot of those too were like the singles. So if you really kind of like New Order, I started to look more into their deep cuts, and they definitely came the closest, like on a lot of things probably, where they would have like a good minute or two. None of them broke 3 by any means that I saw, but like Dreams Never End, like some of the earlier New Order ones was a minute. Senses is 220, Blue Mondays 210, 586 is 2 on the dot. And even Joy Division, I looked at a few, like a handful. There wasn't really much. A couple of the ones, like the Eternal, broke a minute, but most of them were like 50 and 40 seconds. So not really as much as you would think.
Actually, you know who might do it a little bit more? Sisters of Mercy.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering other like kind of gothier side of bands.
Yeah, because like Temple of Love. I mean, that song's just about 8 minutes long. But oh no, you know what though? I'm checking. No, he comes almost right in. That's just a long freaking song.
Yeah. And that seems to be the more common is that bands will start out and then they have like the long middle or the real long rock out ending kind of thing. And that's when you get your extra 8 minutes is when you tack on the outro solo.
Yeah, or a long bridge or, you know, like.
But yeah, it's pretty surprising that they seem to be that consistently alone. And yeah, somebody had mentioned like 9 Inch Nails, you know, seeing all the Downward Spiral anniversary stuff going on. So I took a quick glance at that. Most of those were right off the bat vocals, but then near the end of that album with Erasers 330, so those definitely took a little bit more time to get going. And Downward Spiral is like a spoken word, you know, the actual song, 2 minutes and 30. So I started looking at that old playlist of yours, Coulter, the influenced by one that you had made, or it's bands influenced by. I was like, oh, I wonder if the fucking Essence takes forever to get to the song, you know, because clearly they're influenced by The Cure. Maybe they'd do it too. And the handful, most of them were about 45 seconds still before they came in.
That's surprising.
That Separation song was like 1:30. That was like the longest one that I'd, you know, just kind of I looked at maybe like 5 or 8 songs maybe, but not too many. So yeah, a lot of them kind of broke a minute maybe would be of the other bands, but nothing drastically different. You'd sent in a few Coulter. Do you have those in front of you?
I don't remember all of them, but I know one of them that stood out was Pink Floyd, and as Antonio was kind of talking about, you know, the reason singles were so short and the 45s and all that stuff, which I didn't know much about. The only reason I know anything about records really is because to listen to Torn Down, I think from like my grandparents, I inherited it, and it probably just collected dust. And then when Torn Down came out, I was like, well, the only way I can listen to this, in case they never release it, is to be able to listen to it on that. But Pink Floyd, I mean, they're a band who I would have thought most of their songs were shorter, but they got a lot of long stuff. And what stood out to me was I don't know if either of you are too familiar with Pink Floyd. They're not like my dad really liked them, and I know some of the stuff, but I was more big on the Beatles and other bands. But anyways, what's the name of the album? Wish You Were Here might be the name of it. I think like the first one, but it's like Shine On You Crazy Diamond. It's like parts 1 through 5, but I feel like there's just 5 minutes, or I can't remember the exact time stamp, but it's just, I mean, it's instrumental for a long time. And then
you had 8 minutes 43 seconds for it. So
a long time.
I'd imagine they definitely would have a few. They're one that I totally just missed, you know. But yeah, that would be even like The Wall or something, you know. I'm sure that probably takes a little while to get going, you know. So that'd be one to check out. And you know, they've got, you know, kind of that overlap. That's stuff that Robert was into as a kid, you know. So it makes sense. Meat is Murder.
We did mention that one.
Yeah. If you don't count the slaughtering sounds of animals,
you don't mind that.
I just hate the whole band.
You didn't stick around for 1:50 on that one?
No.
And then you had an Elton John song, "Funeral for a Friend."
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was 5 minutes 49 seconds too, so that's a pretty hefty, intro. But yeah, a lot of those, you know, Elton probably wouldn't be known for it very much, so it's kind of a one-off deal, you know, but still cool. But yeah, I would be curious to see if anybody out there listening would know for sure if there's somebody that does it pretty commonly, in the sense that like the Cure, where if you say that to somebody, most Cure fans would be like, "Oh yeah, they sometimes take a while."
Right?
Yeah. So I wonder if there's any other bands that are totally drawing a blank right now on, but would be curious. I don't know. I even thought like maybe some of the shoegaze bands and stuff. My Bloody Valentine, I kind of went down that route, but a lot of it's just super low vocals that's distorted out, but it does come in about 45 seconds still and 50 seconds. And but yeah, Mogwai, I figured so much of it's instrumental that you can't really count them either. Sometimes they just don't sing. So, I guess bouncing back real quick to Disintegration, then, if people are like shouting, "Come on, man, pictures of you," 1 minute 53, which is actually a little shorter than I'd think. Like maybe just because we're looking at all these ones that are like 2 minutes and 3 minutes and stuff. But
yeah,
like we said, given that it was a single, not only a single but a big single, and it's 1 minute 53, that's still a good chunk of time for sure. Close downs 2 minutes, that breaks 2 minutes at 2 minutes 4 seconds. Last Dance comes real close at 1 minute and 44 seconds. Like we said, Fascination Street's 2 minutes 23. Even Lullabies 1 minute, and Prayers for Rain's almost 2 minutes 143. Same Deep Water as You is one I would think would be like 5 minutes before he starts, but really it was just 1 minute 30. So same with Disintegration. Like you said, Coulter, Fear of Ghost is a pretty hefty one. 2 minutes and 25 seconds. And if I had to bet money, the longest one on Disintegration before the vocals start, I don't think I would have known that Homesick was the winner. 3 minutes and 16 seconds.
I would not have guessed that either.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Just kind of figured it's that little piano riff and then he comes in. But that one trumped all the Disintegration songs somehow. So 3 minutes and 16 seconds. And as you pedal through the Cure's catalog there too, most of them through Wish are about 1 minute. Even Edge of the Deep Green Sea is only 1 minute 20. Trust is a pretty hefty one, 2 minutes and 40 seconds, because that one does kind of play the whole vocal melody on piano and stuff for like a verse before he comes in. So that makes sense. End is 1 minute. Even Burns only 1 minute 15. For Want 220, like we said. Bloodflowers one's 208 for Out of This World, 208 for Last Day of Summer. Self-titled album, I'm just assuming. I didn't listen.
Yeah, you don't have to.
I tried. I think maybe The Promise might have been, but none of them seemed like they were very long. But honestly, I didn't look at like Your God Is Fear or This Morning.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I kind of feel like he comes in pretty quick on those, but then the songs just go on long.
Those are just long, yeah.
So yeah. but yeah, it could be. I did listen to 413 Dream today as we were texting you. I was like, I should listen to that again. And Underneath the Stars breaks the 2 minute mark with 216, and the last one, It's Over, is 208. But everything else was nothing too noteworthy. But yeah, I enjoyed 413 today. That was an interesting, real stroll. This sidebar on that, but
here's one song that I thought it was pretty long. I just looked it up. Death Cab for Cutie, I Will Possess Your Heart.
Okay, yeah.
The song is about 8:25. Lyrics don't come in until about 4:25.
Okay,
it's
that's a good.
It loops that like. But again, it's based around a really catchy bass line that, if you really thought about it, would definitely be a Simon Gallup style bass line.
Yeah.
That's long.
That's not a single, is it? I think I've heard of that one before. It's not a single, is it?
It was.
Huh?
It was the single, yeah. And I don't think the video, when they dropped the video, I don't think it was fully like 4.5 minutes before it kicked in, but I bet you the radio edit's probably still at least 2 minutes, because I remember the first time I saw the video thinking like, wow, this is a really long intro, but it's so catchy, it works, but the album version, they don't sing until about 4:27.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, it is like a good testament to the song too when you can do this. Like we're saying, where if it's catchy, you can pull it off. If the melody's there and, the song's doing fine, nobody cares really. It's only if they're like sitting up there treading water, you're like, fucking get on with it, dude.
Yeah. And obviously we're excluding like, like a lot of like, some of like EDM stuff that barely has any vocals in it. Like I can't really count that if just, once in a blue moon there's like a, like we're gonna dance.
Just some background vocals.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It seems like they were like, you pulled out all the main vocals and just left the random backing vocal from the bass player. So.
You talked about the self-titled, or sorry, no, 413. How Underneath the Stars. You said 216. Did you already mention It's Over? I was kind of surprised that I didn't think It's Over was that long before that.
But yeah, it's a good hefty one there too. And I think that's why a lot of people love Underneath the Stars in particular, because it does kind of touch back to that Disintegration vibe and stuff. They hadn't really done that in a while. I guess going back to like Blood Flowers, maybe you could stretch it back, but it was kind of nice and refreshing when we heard Underneath the Stars for the first time. You're like, oh man, this is like old school Cure. We got the chimes. Right. It's taken a while. His voice is low, and it's just kind of all those things where if he'd come out singing right off the bat on that one, it wouldn't have worked nearly as good.
Well, is that what self-titled was? I Can't Find Myself, and he just leads with that.
Yeah, exactly. He's like singing before the music starts. So that's the problem with self-titled. He's singing too early on everything. So
that's the problem.
So as we head into the unreleased songs, or the new songs, I guess, because we've definitely got some contenders there. Before we get to it, it can never be the same. Seems like one that takes a while. That's 1:46 based on the curation live, since we don't have an official studio version. That's the closest we got, is that live version, and that always seemed a little heftier than 1:45 live. So maybe I don't think they added anything more to it, but it's probably pretty close to that. And of course, the big standouts from 2023, Songs of a Lost World. We don't have official versions yet. But
at time of recording.
Yeah. But based on the billion YouTube clips and everything else, we can get a rough idea that Alone is 3 minutes and 24 seconds. I was kind of going by the Mexico ones on that. It was surprisingly a little shorter. I went back on some Europe ones, and it was 3 minutes. So yeah, they kind of gain an extra 20 seconds as it was played. So it was a little shorter when they first started it somehow. Maybe it was just a little faster, and they slowed down the tempo or something a little bit. But just on the quick kind of listen, watched about 5 or 6 from each, and it seemed about 3 minutes there. Either way, it's in the 3-minute club there, which there's only been, let's see, the song Pornography, The Kiss, Homesick, and now Alone. But our big winner, dun dun dun, can anyone tell? Take a guess. End Song. And that one's clocking in at about 6 minutes and 30 seconds, or 6 minutes and 26. Yeah, which not only is longer than any of the 3-minute ones, but pretty much double all the longest ones. So 6 minutes of rock before those vocals kick in. So
that's crazy. Well, then I felt kind of bad, because at the the recent shows, I was like, oh man, they only played at my show. They played 29 songs. I'm like, 2016 they played 35, and I was like, well, they didn't play. Yeah, I don't know. Like Alone and End Song are long. So, yep.
Yeah, that's like 3 songs right there.
Exactly.
But I didn't realize it was that long too. And even on first glance, I'd almost think that Alone was like closer, like more of a contender. Maybe just because watching the video clips, you see him walking from that side of the stage to the other side and back again. It seems like he's got a lot more time during Alone, but I guess since they're all like rocking out and playing guitars on End Song, it's definitely more of that Fascination Street vibe where something's building each layer, for 6 minutes. You're definitely watching and going, whoa, what are they going to do next? But yeah, that's pretty impressive. So even if the record comes out and they shave like 2 minutes off of that, it'll still be the longest intro Cure song before vocals. as far as awards go, we need to give them that award, I guess, for this. So, and of course, we disqualified any kind of extended or remixes for this experiment here as we looked over these, because those are, genetically engineered to be long intros. So the kids can keep dancing. But but it is kind of neat, like the not only just hunting down the longest ones. I thought just by looking at this list of seeing which ones were surprisingly shorter than you thought they would be too. So kind of plays on both sides of it. But yeah. So I guess if you don't count the live one, the new ones, since they're only live recordings, studio ones so far, the winner would be the Kiss at 350. Based on what I've seen, like I said, I looked at a lot of them, but and a lot of them I just didn't write down because they weren't really noteworthy. They were like only a minute or something like that. But
yeah.
So if anybody thinks of one out there,
it's still definitely. I'd probably bet the house that the Cure's average time before vocals come in is longer than anyone else's in pop rock music. Like
totally.
Yeah, some are noteworthy, but the average has to be at least almost 2 minutes, a little under 2 minutes, probably.
Even a minute, and just looking at those other bands, most
long,
of those, like their long one was a minute, So I mean, the Cure's definitely got a hefty list. This whole first sheet, it's pretty much all a minute, at least.
True, and if it's another band, if they have a long song, it's kind of like that's their one and only long song. It's like the Cure, where they've got a lot.
Right? Yeah, it's the secret track of the last track on an album.
Yeah, exactly, or the big epic finale or something like that. It's not the first song on the album or the single.
Right.
And speaking of singles and long intros, like it still blows my mind that. I didn't want to interject then, but that Underneath the Stars wasn't a single off that record.
Yeah,
I think it's the best song on that album,
for sure, without a doubt. I mean, I love that song, and also then I also wonder, I'm like, could that song have been like pulled out from a demo from an earlier, because like you said, it does feel a little more Disintegration-esque.
Yeah,
is that something that Robert was like, I never did anything with this thing that I kind of thought I was gonna do,
Yeah,
I wonder.
He was pretty vocal about that with Sleep When I'm Dead being.
We were talking about that earlier, Gavin, where they said that was from Head on the Door, but I was like, that would seem very out of place for that era. For the most part, I guess they had different upbeat and then Sinking was slower, so I guess that could make sense. But yeah, that one kind of surprised me.
Was there another one? If that one was too, then he would probably have mentioned it, But...
Right, because I was asking you, I was listening to It Can Never Be the Same and Step Into the Light, and I was like, are these both from 413? You're like, yeah, that's what they've said, which kind of surprised me because, It Can Never Be the Same definitely sounds more in the vein of Disintegration, or those ones that are not as upbeat and are longer. And the Step Into the Light, actually, I think I enjoyed that song. I think it was played live at the show I was at in 2016, but I want to say that the vocals come in right away on that one.
Yeah, that one's right off the bat there. So, and it's funny thinking about Sleep When I'm Dead being Head on the Door ish demo. Even that, I started I was thinking of that while I was cooking tonight, and I was like, well, it must not have made it that far along though, because we would have had
there's no demo that really sounds like it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because they would have dug that up for the deluxe issue, even if it was a really shitty, but you could tell it was that song. So I mean, I'm sure he probably just said "Sleep When I'm Dead." It was probably very thinly connected, and then they rewrote it for the, So it's just kind of neat that it's one phrase or something in a notebook from that era, probably. Because it definitely doesn't seem.
Usually, you can tell. Yeah, wasn't there a song that? Well, there was a "Let's Go to Bed." Wasn't there a demo from a prior album where they had a version and it basically played that melody? Sorry to put you guys on the spot on that, but I'm thinking of one where and you're like, did they already
Pornography.
have that? Yeah, there was one of those just instrumental demos, and it was well, did they already
Temptation or something? I think it was called.
Yeah, I think you may be right. So it was did he already have that? And then he decided, I'll pull from that. I'll use that harmony I mean, so it's always
Yeah.
interesting, like the songs where it's like, we'll hold on to that and we'll do something with it later.
Yeah, makes sense. I've definitely done that where you just hold on to some piece of a song forever and you still try to work it in like a puzzle piece and stuff,
Right.
I'm sure.
Well, that's like there's this band that one of my favorite bands called Sam I Am, and Sergey, the guitar player, he's been in a bunch of bands throughout the years. Sam I Am's been around for over 30 years, you know. And he was telling me he has his newer band Ways Away dropped their first album in 2020. So I was like, oh, well, you know, how did that go? They all don't live in the same state. You know, a bunch of they're all in different bands. They're almost kind of like a super group. And he was like, well, actually, it started because I was going through an external hard drive of songs that I never used for Sam I Am. And I was like, oh, yeah, how many songs do you have? He's like,
Yeah.
tons. He's like, hundreds, you
Yeah.
know? And he's like, I just went back and pulled stuff that Jason the singer like never was able to find melodies for, and
Right.
just and some of them, you know, he said it was like for a certain Sam I Am record was like almost 20 years prior. And I was
Wow.
like, holy shit, you know, like I
Yeah.
was like, you know, because he's a songwriting machine, that guy. Because like I said, he's been in, you know, multiple bands like Knapsack and, you know,
Yeah.
others. But it's just, you know, there are some people that you know that you have like that where he's one of those guys where if he's not on the road he's just always writing songs and just
Yeah.
getting it down, you know, quickly recorded in any way you can. And then we'll go, you know, went back to that well, you know, and that
Yeah.
Ways Away record is incredible too. So it was kind of funny. I was like, man, these could have been, you know, Sam I Am songs, and I wonder what
Yeah.
that would have sounded like, and you know,
That's cool.
you know.
Yeah, it's funny even with like your more of like the stuff that's been kind of leaked that aren't official demos, you know, like the
Mhm.
ones for Wild Mood Swings and stuff. I found like folders of just
Yeah.
like early versions of Want or something, you know, and a lot of them like Robert definitely seems to be the kind he'll write like a little loop almost of the guitar part and the chord progression basically. And, you know, hearing it even, you know, as much as I know the songs and love them, I'm like, how the fuck did that turn into round and round and round? You know what I mean? But it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
just some little part you could tell. And, you know, I'm sure he's got the same, you know, like just hundreds of folders of that stuff. And
Yeah,
if
I'm
you just
sure.
grab it again on the right day, you could be like, oh yeah, this is an old thing, but he's basically rewriting it. And then, but at the same time,
Mhm.
you could give yourself credit for finding it, you know, something you had in 1985 or so, you know,
Totally.
totally,
I'm just
totally
how they
could see
stored it.
that
Like
happening.
Antonio was saying, you know, the guy had all that stuff on a hard drive. The first album that comes to mind where I felt like we heard a lot of material that well, maybe wasn't meant for us to hear yet was like when Wish came out, like the Music for Dreams, or there was just a lot of demos. So I wonder if before that it was like home
Yeah.
recordings or tape recordings. They had it that way, but once the internet came out, you know, there was a lot more bands where you could find stuff that was leaked by, you know, somebody who had a connection to them or record label or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. As they get bigger, more and more people are like snagging the tapes and the copies of the tape.
And then that stuff gets out there.
The
Well, think about
intern.
we
Yeah.
had well they had the was it Lost Wishes where it had the four songs like Music for Dreams. I think that stuff was on the internet for forever, and then they just barely with this Wish, you know, remaster put it out there. So I'm sure
Yeah.
there's still tons of other stuff that we don't even know about.
Yeah, there was a few on those that weren't even on the Wish stuff, you know. So yeah, or some variation of
Right.
it. So, that's why you gotta get those extra deluxe ones out, you know. It'd be cool because those Wild Boot Swing ones and stuff in particular was definitely some really questionable. You know, it's kind of like the old Wish ones where I'm like, I'm not even sure this is the fucking Cure on
Right.
some of these, you know.
Yeah.
Or like the Lost Flowers ones and stuff like that. You know, like what
Well, one
is
of those
this? You know,
songs, one of the songs from Lost Flowers, and they just were called like Lost Flower One, Lost Flower. But what was the song
yeah.
that was they played it? It's going to be off the supposedly off the new album. And I think they played it maybe Hollywood Bowl, another Happy
Yeah, the
Birthday
another happy
or Unhappy
birthday, I
Birthday.
think
Yeah,
it's called.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they took that,
Yeah,
they
another.
used that, you know, way later. That was from
Yeah,
supposedly the Blood Flowers era, and they've taken it and used it
yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely the same piano melody and stuff.
Yep,
After somebody called that out, and I went back to and dug out the MP3, and I was like, "Holy
you're like,
shit, that
yep,
is it!"
that's
So
it.
yeah, that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. Where he must have just held on to it for whatever reason and gave it a go, and which is odd because if they'd bring that back too, then I guess there isn't anything saying that they couldn't re-record it could never be the same for the new album, So at this point, they should.
I hope they do. I like that. Some people have complained about this, but what they played that. It's like, I think it was part of the first encore the show is that they played that, and then they went into one of the new songs and blanking on the name, but it was the one about his brother and I can never say goodbye. They're almost like similar names. So I was like, wait a minute. But yeah, it was like back to back. I'd be fine with that on the album. I felt like some people are like, oh no, those didn't flow together, but I enjoyed it. And, I mean, it's one thing live, but I liked it.
Yeah, I think that would be great on there. It seemed to fit with all the other ones, where it has kind of the harder side, but then like really, poignant lyrics and everything, so it's it would be good. Or at least that was a B-side, if they put out a single of anything,
I would just like a studio version. We've got, what's the closest one we have? Is it a curation or whatever? And it's take it over nothing.
Exactly, yeah. Just throw us a bone, man.
I would like, and we're kind of rambling at this point, but A Boy I Never Knew, that's one that doesn't have a...
Yeah, all those.
Why don't they have that as a studio one?
They got some version of it. They must have tried it.
All those something somewhere.
There's probably a finished mixed version of it just sitting somewhere. So
eventually, because that'd be off of, well, that was from self-titled. So who knows? Because we just got Wish. Was the Wish remaster last year, and then before that, Disintegration was like 10 years. So hopefully, I live to see all of them come out remastered.
Yeah. Luckily, there isn't too many left, but yeah, we still got Wild Mood Swings, Blood Flowers, self-titled, and 413 for the reissues. But so I guess as we wind down here, then I guess we concluded the long intro. This was all just actually the intro of this episode, and now we're gonna go into the real episode starts now. Just kidding. So let us know if you could think of any other bands that compete with The Cure consistently with the long beginnings before the vocals, and let us know your favorite long intro, if you will. And thank you so much, Coulter, for joining us and making time. I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate it. And thank you, Antonio. And I hope everybody out there takes care, and we'll catch you soon. I guess we'll wrap up on that note then, since we just dragged out this intro so long. So. All right, guys, we'll take it easy, and thanks so much, and talk hard. Again, thank you, Antonio, and a big special thank you to Coulter. Always a pleasure talking to Coulter and having him back on the show. As always, let's give a big giant thanks and cheers to our mighty Patreon crew. Raise up your glasses and honor Donna, Craig, Jeff Hilton, Jeff Cortland Jones, Sue, Ben, John, Alan, Allison, Dion, Namicio, Bunny Lake, Matt, Danny, Coulter, Matt Ford, Tom Johnson, Tom Burns, Letty, John Roberts, Francisco, Jason, Craig Bellinger, Amber, Nicholas, Arno, and Chad, and our newest member, Shirley. Shirley, welcome to the party, Shirley. Your mix CD and goodies are on the way, so keep your eyes peeled on that mailbox. Welcome, and thank you. And good old Tanya is also part of our Patreon, and she would like to spread awareness of 988lifeline.org, a suicide and crisis hotline with over 200 crisis call centers located all over the U.S., available 24/7, offering free and confidential support for people in distress, and numerous prevention and crisis resources. So call or chat online if you or anyone you know is in need of help. Tim is part of New Waterloo, an independent hospitality development, design, and management company that owns and operates hotels and restaurants all over the U.S. and now beyond. So find their locations at newwaterloo.com to book a stay and a meal today. Or maybe not today, it's a little bit short notice, but definitely lock something down for the not too distant future. Not only is Scott Kroger an amazing artist and devoted Cure fan, he also co-hosts the Sarlacc Digest, a weekly Star Wars podcast that airs every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Pacific Time on Facebook or YouTube. Or you can catch the replays anywhere you listen to your podcasts. They are also expanding their universe with a bi-weekly Monday show called Sarlacc Toy Chest, focusing on the collector's side of Star Wars, and Beyond the Pit, a show every other Monday where the fellas discuss pop culture gems in general and a wide range of topics on that one. And you can find all these shows and outlets on their Sarlacc Digest YouTube page, so go check it out and dive into the action. Dana is a motion designer and animator ready to help out your business or project. Check out her awesome work at graphics.tv. That's graphics with an X. And reach on out. Kate is once again wrangling up artistic Cure fans at Cure Arts Collab on Instagram to create a single cover for Robert's upcoming 65th birthday later this month. You pick a song, create the single cover, create it, post it, put all the hashtags where they need to be by 11:59 on the 21st of April, and you'll also be entered to win something cool from katescurethreads.com. So go check out the pinned message on Cure Arts Collab on Instagram to get all those guidelines and details. Don't miss out. If you are up in Calgary, Canada, follow Lisa's Q and head on over to Dickens, the coolest bar venue in Calgary. At dickensyyc.com, you can see the full schedule. And or follow Jessica's advice and visit Club Nevermore down in Little Rock, Arkansas to get the full goth experience and hit up their big 5-year anniversary party on the 26th of April. You can visit clubnevermore.com for a full listing and more details. 17 Second Shirts is back, at least for a short while, so be sure to go over to 17secondshirts.bigcartel.com and pre-order one of Chaz's Disintegration shirts. He has it up in 2 awesome colors, purple and yellow or green and white, and it's cool as hell, so don't miss out on this one. Go on over. You can check it out on his Instagram too at 17_seconds. And when you got that all pre-ordered and ready to go, then you go check out his other podcast, the X Communication Station, where he, Donovan, and Chrissy try to figure out why the hell none of us were good enough to get raptured this week during the eclipse. And what do we got to do here? All right, can't believe it. None of us got chosen. Oh well, so yeah, since we're all sticking around, you might as well subscribe to this podcast on Apple or Spotify, wherever you can subscribe. On YouTube, check out that YouTube page. It doesn't get enough attention or love, so go on over there and follow the YouTube page and check out some of the bonus content too, and hit up our Facebook page where you can get in on some commenting on the episodes, as well as the Instagram page, of course, the Holy Hour Podcast. Or just email me if you're the old-fashioned type and just like to chit-chat. Drop me a line at gavinconner@gmail.com. Make sure you spell Connor E-R, not O-R. All right, lots of cool stuff on the horizon, so stay tuned and we'll catch you next time. Thanks again to Antonio and our guest Coulter. We'll catch you soon. Talk hard.